morning and welcome to North Texas Networkers, a show about introducing interesting people across the DFW area. And it's sponsored by Willow Bend Mortgage. Thank you, Craig Schrank. We always appreciate you. And today we're going to be talking about a couple of things. One is Leadership Plano, which is an organization that trains people to become charity-wise, I guess I should say, and also help integrate into the business community and to learn a lot about your city. And it's not just a Plano leadership program, they actually have them in several different cities. So we will be talking with some of our favorite people about that. So that's one thing. The second thing is we're going to find out what an engineer, an attorney, and a concrete expert have in common.
Absolutely. These guys are amazing. So one of them was a defense attorney in the Navy, in the Army. One of them had, he is, just for fun, reads astrophysics books. I didn't even know those existed. And the other one, if you've ever heard of 7 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon, I think he's about 4 degrees separation from anyone you might know. So we are so happy to have Byron, Paul, and Jason with us today. And they were all part of Leadership Plano's 25th class, along with Caralee and myself. Well, yes. So welcome, gentlemen.
We are
the best class ever. For sure. And so when we all came together the first time, we were all strangers. I mean, I knew Caralee a little bit from, previous work in junior league, but we all walked into this classroom really not knowing, for the most part, the majority of our class. And what do you guys think by the end of that? Don't you feel like we really had formed some bonds in that class?
Many.
Yeah.
Many, absolutely.
So what were one of your highlights about that class year?
And you can take it one at a time, however you want to do that.
For me, I think what you just said is you walk into a room full of strangers at the beginning, and by the end of that first weekend, you are really connected to one another, and you get immersed with one another in that opening retreat weekend, ropes course, getting dirty, all of those kinds of things, and really beginning the process of learning about the city of Plano and what leadership is really all about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Byron?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the fact that we got, what was it, like 30 of us or so together? And we were all from such different backgrounds. But we just kind of had, we found the commonalities amongst us and we learned from each other. And I just thought that was a wonderful experience. For me, being an engineer, I just hang out with engineers. And they just all think kind of the same way. And when I got
together people don't think like you.
When I got together with you guys, it was just refreshing because, you guys think very differently. You come from different backgrounds, different perspectives, and I thought that was just wonderful.
Nice.
That's great.
I would echo that, just the diversity of the class, just folks that you would have never typically run around with, hung out with, been in congregation with. My first ride on the bus was with an Asian girl that barely spoke English. She ended up passing away during our time. And it was unbelievable. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to talk to this girl about? And she was the warmest, sweetest, most outgoing spirit, and we became like best buddies. So I just remember thinking to myself, you have these preconceived notions that are false. They're faulty, especially if you look at the media and things like that. It's a false narrative.
Right.
And folks, I think, are generally wound up the same in their hearts and their minds and their spirits, and it opened me up right that very day for the rest of my life. So it was deeply
one of my
changing.
favorite things about it has been the connection that we continue to have over the years, because our class was in the year 2007, as we kind of backwards our years.
Y'all realize that's been 15 years now.
It's been a long time, and I consider y'all friends.
Yeah.
I mean, just close friends that I feel if I needed something, I could call. But we learned so much together just about how the city interworks together, how important small businesses are in our community, and even how to learn to get into politics was part of our process, and just really incredible.
Yeah.
So,
tell us a little bit about your business backgrounds that brought you into that program, and what was it that kind of brought you there?
You want me to start?
Sure.
So, there were two things. My wife and I had founded a charity that gave monies to Children's Medical Center, and through the give back to Children's, and Children's was put a new hospital in Plano, which led me further back into Plano. We also do concrete and general contracting work all over Collin County. So Plano was one of our big pushes, and I live there, and so it just made a lot of sense for me. But and then just the deep intrinsic drive to hopefully leave the place, this world, maybe a bit better than I found it, which I still have to this day. And that was just one way where I could kind of figure out what some opportunities might be that existed out there, and just get around some great people. And that was probably the hidden best thing I didn't know at the time when I signed up, was the people. And that's what's lasted, and that's why we're still here together.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think for me, our law firm was very, very involved in a lot of community work. And they had, for years prior to me going into Leadership Plano, they had put or had encouraged one person out of our firm every year to apply for the program. And so here I show up, and they said, hey, why don't you give it a shot? And I said, what's that? And I had a lot to learn, but so glad they encouraged me to do that. And I applied, and I got accepted class 25. And for me, it was coming into the program, it was like, wow, just seeing what is going on in the city. You know, there are things that we see just based on where we live, but there is so much more, you know, the nonprofit world, you know, the charitable organizations, the law enforcement, public safety that you don't, you know, some of us don't really have a whole lot of experience with. And so it really opened up my eyes to, hey, I need to get involved in the community and really serve and figure out what is going to be a good fit for me. And I can attribute Leadership Plano, and many of you, I mean, Stacy, you and I had a conversation right at the very beginning on the bus ride. We didn't know each other.
No.
But, you know, I was picking Stacy's brain about Junior League. I had no idea what that was. And I was firing. I must have asked her 20 questions.
Yeah, I definitely was glad I knew a lot of the answers.
Yes,
I've
me
never
too.
been interrogated like that in my whole life.
But
Definitely attorney.
I came I came off that bus going, okay, that's what Junior League is and what they do, and it was just so refreshing and just learning, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, to extend off of that, it wasn't my business, Texas Instruments, that got me into Leadership Plano. It was my wife, who was in Junior League. And she was just telling me to get off the couch. You're not doing enough for the community. You need to be involved more. And I really didn't have any clue about what it is to be involved in the community. And so she really was a motivation for me to get out there and apply and get in. I was very fortunate to get in with you guys. You guys were just simply amazing. I looked at you guys as soon as I came in. I was like, why am I here? I'm the one. I mean, I'm amongst rock stars in the community and that do things in the community. And, you know, I just hang out on the couch and go work at Texas Instruments every once in a while. And but it was a fantastic experience. And like Paul was saying, you know, I was driving around the neighborhood, and I didn't know things like the Children Advocacy Center was really right down the street from me. And so it really got me aware and exposed to my community, and what are some of the things that I could do in the community to help. And it really, you know, I always wanted to help, but I never really thought about it and was really intentional about it. And so I think Leadership Plano brought that out, you know, that you need to be intentional, you need to go out and do things in the community, you need to make this a better place. And so that's kind of how I got started with it. And, you know, I ended up doing some other things like afterwards with SciTech Discovery Center and a few other places. And it was really just because I got involved with Leadership Plano that got me motivated and going in that direction.
Yeah.
I kind of like to go back to what we were saying earlier, Paul, I think you said it about how unique everyone was. And I'd love to ask you each just to tell us a little bit about yourselves, because you are all so different. We all are, but yet we still tend to come together. And just tell us a little bit about your family and how you interact in the community.
So I've been married 22 years. My wife's Michelle, and we live in West Plano, Willow Bend area. And I have a son that's a senior at Indiana University, Bloomington, Indiana. And I have a daughter that is 18 that lives currently at home with us. I grew up here. I went to J.J. Pierce High School in Richardson, and then went on to SMU, and then moved back north. So I've been around Dallas since I was a kid. You know, and you called me Kevin Bacon.
I
but
did
it's
call you
just-
Kevin Bacon. I was about to say, every time I get a new friend request or I connect with somebody on Facebook,
all related.
They're all friends with Jason Frazier. I'm like, no surprise anymore. So
hilarious.
how is?
But I think that leads
why?
back to the fact that I've just been here a long
Yeah.
time, and I've it's just longevity, and I like people, so I get
You
out and I
do.
meet people
You're very
a lot,
friendly.
So. But yeah, I would attribute it to being here. A lot of people move from A to B to C and don't have these deep roots, and I've been here since I was a kid. So.
But I think it also speaks to your personality about how outgoing you are and that you just attract people to you that.
You're sweet. Well, I don't know
Yeah,
about that.
I do.
No, I concur.
Yeah, it's true.
Paul, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, let me just start with a little fun fact. A lot of people don't know this about me, but I actually spent 3 years guessing people's age and weight at Six Flags.
No,
And a
I'm
lot
not
of
going to
people,
ask you to do that.
you would lose on me.
a lot of people get a kick out of that because
Yeah.
I was a carny back in the day. And I loved that job, and so that was right before going into college and
Is
all
there
of that.
training for
So
that, or
there
you-
is no training
Keen eye.
whatsoever.
It's really just a gussing game.
It is
He
just
has
a
offended
guessing
many
game.
people.
I have offended many
What are your
people.
stats?
Yes. Anyway, been married 34 years now. My awesome wife, Tamra, we have 2 daughters. They are both out of the house. We're empty nesters. They're both married to great husbands. And and so both my wife and I grew up in Fort Worth, but we have lived over on this side of the Metroplex for the last 21 years. And started in Plano and just kept moving north. We were Plano for a decade and then Frisco for about 8 or 9 years, and now we have downsized as empty nesters in Prosper.
Nice.
And so anyway, so we just have a great time being empty nesters
Yeah.
and
It's a good life.
working, and it's just great, just great. Guessing each other's age and weight.
Every 10 years.
Hopefully it's not much of a
This
guess, at
decade.
least on the age.
Okay, well, fun fact about me. Do you guys remember what I used to do in my kind of side gig in college? You guys remember that at all?
Getting your,
Stanford.
hold on,
I know
getting
you went to Stanford.
I mentioned it in Leadership Plano 15 years ago. 15
working
years
on
ago.
your PhD at MIT, was that it?
No. That's not my. The fun fact
He's
is
a
that.
Stanford man, not an
Yes,
MIT
that's
man.
right.
It's both. Yeah.
Get the facts right.
MIT's the evil empire.
I used to do it with my hands. I was
Magician.
a massage therapist.
Oh.
Okay, so I did that. That's a kind of a fun
We'll
fact,
see you
I
after
guess,
the
about
show.
myself. Nobody took me up on it. They were scared, I guess, to find out. But I've been a massage therapist in college in particular. But I have a wife from 21 years of marriage, Robin Joseph Williams, Junior League, as I mentioned
Yes.
before. I have 3 kids, 3 boys, which drives her absolutely crazy. Me too at times, but they're great. One's a sophomore in Jesuit, and the other one's a junior in Jesuit. And I got a sophomore in Xavier University in New Orleans,
Nice.
studying medicine.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I guess, those are the main things going on with me, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very good. Well, what's one of the biggest memories that kind of sticks out, or one of the funniest, or maybe one of the, even if it's not funny, one of the serious kind of things that really stuck with you from our class of 25? Paul?
I've got.
Yeah, go ahead,
okay,
Jason.
Go ahead. I just got 2. One was our friend dying during the
Yes.
middle of the class. That
Yeah.
was deeply
Tell a little bit
impactful
about
to me.
Bernadette. Tell.
She was just a beautiful, kind. Like I said, she spoke broken English, Asian.
She was lovely.
Oh, so sweet, and right in the middle of their class, she passed
It happened
away.
so fast,
You
too.
know.
I think she
Diagnosed
passed
with
within
pancreatic cancer.
And that goes
6
fast.
weeks, 7 weeks later.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I remember, I was thinking I was big and strong guy. I was doing the ropes course and jumping over, trying to grab that thing. And I was like, I got it. And I think I barely held on. And then I watched Susie jump over there, grabbed it, and she starts flipping. She's a gymnast.
She's a gymnast.
I didn't know how strong gymnasts were at that point in my life. My daughter became a gymnast later, and,
Yeah.
and they're just freakish, like strength to body weight ratio. They're unbelievable, and she just had this grip
kinda
strength.
took you
and she
down a
was-
notch.
humbled, deeply humbled by a 5'1", maybe 5'0", 98-pound gymnast, and who's big and bad she was, not me.
That's funny.
It's funny. I too recall the Susie experience at the ropes
what an
course,
athlete, yeah.
and she went up the telephone pole, right, to what Jason's talking about, to jump out to the trapeze. And if any of you have ever done that, you know when you get to the top, you then have this episode of, this is very unnatural for me to jump to this trapeze. And even though you know you're connected and harnessed, you still, it's just your brain tells you,
a terrible feeling.
what are you doing, right? But I remember seeing Susie go right before me, and I said, well, if she can do this,
Little girl.
yeah. And anyway, that was, I do recall that. But yeah, I think that whole opening weekend, I mean, the whole year was tremendous. We all grew closer and closer together, throughout the year working on our project. But I think, like I mentioned earlier on, the opening weekend, because you had a number of these intentional things that you did to learn about trust, diversity, different perspectives, overcoming fear. That was a biggie. And that, when you go through something like that, it stays right here, right in here. So anyway, that stands out to me.
Yeah, speaking of Bernadette, when we get together, I send you guys out emails and everything. I always leave Bernadette on the email list. I still think of her, of course, as being a part of us. So that was a very sad loss and very sad time for us during that period. I guess the one thing, I mean, there's several things that you think about when it comes to Leadership Plano, and maybe they're not so entertaining and funny, but I just remember the one session that we had where we went to the fire department and we saw the accident and stuff like that. And I just remember how that was just it had a very strong impact on me. And, wanting to make sure that my children understood that, driving down the street is a dangerous thing, and that, you need to make sure that you're safe and you do the right things and you're not sitting there eating your peanut butter and jelly sandwich while you're driving and all that type of stuff. So it just kind of, brought me back to what are some of the basic, more fundamental things that you need to be teaching your kids when they're growing up. And so that particular session I thought was really impactful. And I thought that the project that we worked on too, I thought was great in terms of going around meeting various groups and getting the medicines that we needed to get for the adult clinic, was it?
Bernadette's bags. That was the project.
Bags and everything. I just thought
class
that was
project.
fantastic. Yeah, fantastic class project we had.
And I think to Byron's point, going through all of that, like what Byron is just talking about, as we all know, Plano has a Plano Youth Leadership Program. So then I turned to my daughter, who was getting ready to go into the 10th grade at the time, and I said, hey, I think you need to look into this. This is really, it's made an impact on me. And she applied, got in, and did her whole 10th grade year in the Plano Youth Leadership Program, and loved it, and learned a lot of the same things that we all did.
One of the things that really impacted me was going to the prison. And I actually ended up taking my child and his friends when they were in 6th grade, and we went and did that tour of the juvenile detention center. Did that impact you?
That did.
For sure.
That did, for sure.
Yes.
I really just watching that whole process, I never want to go to prison.
I don't either.
It's pretty safe bet none of us do.
I think we're pretty safe.
Made it this far. I'd like to finish up without going.
And it gives you a little bit more fuel too when you go to and experience that, and you go back and talk to your children about it, and share that with your children and maybe their buddies or whatever. That really, it's glamorous maybe on TV, but it ain't that glamorous. You do not want to go there. So
No, and I think it really impacted the kids we took. So I was glad to go back and be able to have that Leadership Plano connection for them to let us come in and tour it with our kids. It's great.
I think for me, one of the things that really stuck out is we went to Samaritan Inn and served lunch to the homeless shelter in Collin County, and then we sat afterwards and sat and visited with the people that were residing at the homeless shelter. And the man I spoke with was a very intelligent man. He had been an artist. He had his PhD, and yet here he found himself in a homeless shelter. And it really kind of hit home that it can happen to anyone. There's no stereotype about how you end up homeless, and that's really what stuck with me too. It can happen to anyone. So it was such a great experience, and it's still going strong, and we're excited about that. And like you said, every city pretty much has their own program for the most part. So
Yeah, it's been a great experience. But so is your friendship. We love that. We also like to ask kind of a fun question. Okay, and you can take this one at a time as well. So if you could go back, money, talent was no object whatsoever, and you started all over again, what would you do?
So I thought about that, and I try to chip away at that each year. So I add things to that list, and I've already gotten to a lot of them. But the one that I have not gotten to is music. I wish that I had picked up an instrument a long time ago. I love to sing, and I think that once I am at least semi-retired, I will either piano or guitar. I would
What
love
kind of
to.
Music do you sing?
Everything.
I did not, learn something
Yeah.
new after 15 years.
Yeah, and I love all types of music. So.
singer, Jason the singer.
That's great.
The
And hopefully
musician.
maybe
musician.
piano or guitar or
Okay.
both.
Yeah.
We'll have you play events for us.
Okay. Got to get to work.
Well, it's not being a carny.
Okay, you've been there, done that.
Okay.
Already did that.
No. That's off my bucket
Already did
list,
that.
or some list.
Yeah.
No, it is a no-brainer for me. If I could do it all over again with none of those options, that Caralee, the caveats, if you will, I would be a high school, college guidance counselor.
Really?
Absolutely.
Really?
When I was helping my daughters through that process, I would turn to my wife all the time and say, I love this. I'll do this for free. And just the process and helping young people apply to college, maximize their scholarship opportunities. I do not know why I love it, but I just do.
Yeah.
And so, when I retire from the practice
do
of
that.
law, who knows? I
do
may
it.
end up, going into a high school one day. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
It'd be great.
Yeah, Paul, and
Incredible.
I would say you would be great, for sure.
I would
You know,
like you as my high school guidance.
for sure.
Yeah.
I had a high school guidance counselor, and they pointed out that, I had an affinity for math and science. And they said, why don't you think about applying to MIT? And I thought, really, what's MIT? And I applied and got accepted, but guidance counselors are just so instrumental. I wish I could remember who she was so I could go back and thank her for what she did.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think that's just
I
fantastic.
think I would have
Have
rather had
those
one of
stories.
y'all.
Yeah.
For sure.
I
I think if I had to go back and do it again, when I was a little kid, I was very inspired by watching the movie Star Wars, right around 1977 or whatever, and I just dreamed about going to the stars. Dreamed about it after that. And my parents recognized that. They bought me a telescope. I had my 6-inch Dynoscope telescope, and it was just fantastic, reflector telescope. And so if I had to go back...
Thank you for the clarification.
Just wanted to get it clear. In case you guys were
Wouldn't have known
wondering,
the
was a
difference.
refractor or reflector?
Didn't know.
I just
Didn't
wanted
know
to
there was a
understand
difference
what
at
I was
all.
talking
No
about.
either.
But
Thanks for the
anyway.
clarity.
So if I had to do it again, I'd probably go back and be an astronomer and astrophysicist. I think
I
that would be
love it.
fantastic. As a matter of fact, it was probably about, 5 years ago. I was looking through all these old papers that I have, and I pulled out this paper that I was a co-author on when I was at the Planetary Science Institute in Tucson as a summer program, and during my years at MIT. And I was like, I actually was, doing something useful here. I actually was on a paper and everything. And I think that I could have easily stayed on that trajectory, and that would have been just great. So if I had to do it all over again, I probably would go down that profession, do that.
Interesting.
Well, there's one more question we always like to ask too, and that is there anything we didn't ask you today that you wish We have about 4 or 5 minutes left.
Anything we didn't talk about that we need to get
Do
to?
you think, I would have loved to have shared those today.
Well, I'd like to hear from everybody. What are you guys doing in the community now, if you are doing something?
So it's not really our community, but it's kind of the worldwide community. I don't know if you guys know about my daughter and our accident, but we spent the last 4 years trying to talk with every person that would listen to us, from congressmen to senators to leaders in the community, about the problem that my daughter had with the seat restraints that break away into headspace of children that sit in the back seat. And we spent several years going on full offensive. We were on every news channel that would let us talk about it. And we made some great headway. They've passed through with the Infrastructure Act what's called the Modernizing Seatback Safety Act, which is going to save children's lives eventually worldwide, but over the next few years it will change the way all automobile seats are created, so that they do not reflect backwards into the headspace of children. So
Yeah.
that's been our big push, and we caught lightning in a bottle and kind of got lucky when Biden came to the office. And unfortunately, Texas is sort of a pro-business state, and the auto lobby is huge here. So we had some trouble in Texas, but we got a lot of traction around the United States, and eventually we pushed through a new law. It's a federal law. So
That's amazing.
that's something we're very proud of, and my daughter's name is in the bill, and so it's been
I love that y'all
wonderful.
took something so traumatic and had some good come out of it.
Some real good
That's
come out of it,
amazing.
yeah, and she continues to heal, so we remain hopeful and optimistic for wins on all fronts, and that's one of the big ones we've had.
Love that.
I love
Very
that too.
good.
I love that too.
Paul, what are you doing out in the community now?
Well, now, you know, I've spent a number of years on some different boards around the city, just learning, continuing to learn. I spent some time on the Frisco Economic Development Board of Directors.
Not much going on up there, right?
And
Bit of
not
economic
much at
development.
all. That was really tremendous. I spent about 4 years on that board, and then now I am on the Children's Advocacy Center of Collin County Board, and I'm
With our
real,
mutual
real
friend,
close to Byron.
Courtney.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I've been on that board about 4 years, and boy, what a tremendous organization that is. You know, I think we all know the Children's Advocacy Center of Collin County really, I think, leads the state in the service to the children, child abuse, and support in the court system, you know, what these kids have to go through and their families.
Yep.
So I love being on that board.
That's awesome.
And so that's what I'm doing now.
Very good.
Okay. Well, we hate to cut it short, but I see it's
About
time
out
to
of
go.
time.
Thank y'all so
We're
much.
so happy y'all were here.
Thank you, ladies.
Yeah, glad you were here.
What a great show.
We are really glad to have you here. So
guys are
I'm
awesome.
Caralee.
And I'm Stacy,
And we are your real estate professionals.
Thank you for joining us on North Texas Networkers.
Visit our website, mariposagroupdfw.com. That's MARIPOSA Group DFW.com for more information about the show and other resources. I'm Caralee.
And I'm Stacy.
And we are your real estate professionals.